And then I know that you do some heart rate variability
Mm-hmm.
testing, or how are you kind of paying attention to that with people? Because I know you do some work in person with people and some work remotely.
Yeah, I think in this population, the hardest part is basically just figuring out what is the cost of the thing you had them do, right?
Mhm.
And you can grade that by looking at acute symptoms. You can grade that by looking at symptoms after. Sometimes they're delayed 20 or 30 minutes. Sometimes they don't really know until the next day in rare cases. So I always have them do an AM heart rate variability. So for people listening, heart rate variability is a marker of status of the autonomic nervous system. How much are you on the parasympathetic versus the sympathetic side? And while it's not perfect, it gives us an idea of, did we really kind of overcook their system the day before, right? So if their HRV the next day is very low, so when you lose fine scale variability, that is a sign of more sympathetic stress, then okay, it could be a lot of things because HRV won't tell us what the thing was, but it is very accurate saying, okay, due to your autonomic nervous system, something was very stressful yesterday. So I'm probably going to move back what we did for exercise. Again, see if we can get under that threshold and make sure HRV is relatively stable day to day. And I think that works well to determine the cost. And then also to kind of, because I want something that's not always symptomatic. Like I want to know how they're feeling, but at the same time, I don't. In a perfect world, I don't want them to be focused on that all the time. It's like the check oil light on your car. Like I only want to know if the oil's low. Like don't tell me every day the oil's fine, right? I don't need to know that. Like yeah,
Mhm.
we want to know your symptoms, but I don't want to be so hyper focused on that that's the only thing we look at. It's like don't look at don't think of a purple cow. It's like, oh shit, I thought of a purple cow, right? The thing you're constantly talking to them about subconsciously, you're just going to be reminding them. So sometimes I'll tell them like, hey, they're like, I don't feel so good today. How do I do it? I'm like, just try it, and we'll look at your HRV the next day and see how it goes, right?
Mhm.
So I want to try to give them some other marker or some sort of safety net that, yeah, if this is not going in the right direction, we're not just going to tell you to suck it up and watch 4 more David Goggins videos and just try harder, right? We're going to look at an actual physiologic marker to see, oh, wow, for whatever reason, it says your physiology is stressed. Okay. If that goes on for a couple more days, let's look at it. Let's try something else. It could be nutrition related. It could be some of the neuro drills they're doing. It could be the exercise. It could be modality. It's a little bit tricky to figure out what it is. But we're at least going to look at it because we have very good data to show that the cost was high. And we know if we keep running things with the costs that are high, eventually the wheels are going to fall off. You're going to be in a worse state, and then you got to figure stuff out from there. So I like using it a lot, just AM HRV measurement each day. There's I don't know if there's really a lot of utility to do it post exercise. Um, it's just too much affected by the exercise and the state and everything else. If they are kind of an anomaly and they can get up to a higher heart rate, you can do a 2-minute heart rate recovery test. Just have them sit for 2 minutes and then monitor how fast the heart rate recovers in the first minute versus the second minute. That's a very accurate test for what's called parasympathetic reactivation. You can see if that's normal or abnormal. So even sometimes I'll use that if people are not really getting to a true max, just to get a little bit of an idea of, kind of what is the status of their autonomic nervous system? How is it responding? And it only takes 2 minutes. You can just do that right after the test.
Yeah, I've certainly had patients who they have, a heart rate elevation during the workout, but then they say, yeah, but then when I stop the workout, like for 30 minutes after, my heart rate is still higher than it should be. It's
Yep.
like, okay, well, that's abnormal. So I could see how paying attention to those recovery rates kind of afterwards is also important. Do
Yeah, they
you,
get kind of
do
stuck
you
in
have a,
that sympathetic loop. So
yeah.
they can't access the parasympathetic side of the equation, so they can't get their heart rate to come down. Again, it's not in this case, it's not necessarily a conditioning thing. It's how their nervous system is operating. But that's good to know, right? So if it's like, hey, man, it's like 2 minutes later, your heart rate only recovered by 15 beats per minute. Okay, yeah. So on the parasympathetic side, you're having a hard time turning that system back on. So now we may modify the exercise prescription. We may do things that are more parasympathetic in general now to try to train that system more. Because if we look at people not post-concussive, we do know that heart rate recovery is a very good marker for parasympathetic reactivation. We know that the more trained they are, the higher their baseline level of parasympathetic tone is, the more they can use that to recover faster after exercise. So it makes sense that in this population, maybe we can do, some breath work or, certain types of vagal stim or whatever. There's lots of other things we can do to try to increase that parasympathetic tone. You combine that with, if their heart rate variability measurements normally at baseline are just dog crap, they're very, very sympathetic. Cool. That gives us some data now of a direction that we kind of want to go.
Mm-hmm. And do you have a certain favorite device that you recommend to people who want to keep track of their heart rate variability?
I mean, the device I've used for the longest time is a system called iThlete. So instead of athlete, it's iThlete. It works really well. I've known the CEO there for quite a while. It's debatable how long it'll be supported since he has another job and stuff right now. Jason Moore, who runs Elite HRV, is pretty good. HRV for training is good, which is Marco Altini. The thing I don't like about those systems as much, and I've told them this, so I'm not saying anything bad by not telling them, is if you're really into HRV, it's useful. If you're not, it gets to be a little bit confusing because there are different ways of measuring heart rate variability. What I like about the iThlete app is it's just one way, time domain, takes 60 seconds, and you can have these slider switches on the bottom that tell you context. So it'll say rate your nutrition, rate your recovery, rate your pain, whatever. And so when I get the data, I can see resting heart rate, I can see HRV, and I can see context indicators of what they reported. And there's nothing else on the app. There's no way to do any other measurements or look at any other data. And these other apps are good, but there's almost too much data in there, and you just get all these crazy questions because people are like, "Oh, but my frequency method was this, and it said this, and my total power was this," and it's like, oh, it's even if
Too much
you,
data.
it's just too much, and some of it's conflicting, to be honest. Some of it goes one way, some of it goes the other way. And I didn't, so far today, I haven't found anything where that's value added. There are other devices, like I have a Garmin watch, Apple does HRV, I have an Aura ring, Aura does that. I'm testing like 2 other devices right now too.
Yeah, I got the Morpheus, so I have the
Yeah,
Morpheus.
Morpheus is great. Tell Joel I said hi. I love Joel.
I used to have the iFleet, and then I lost it. So the iFleet is like the little blue, like finger sensor thing, right? That you plug into your phone.
Yeah, it used to be a finger sensor, or you can,
like 2016 when I think I had one.
Yeah. But yeah, you can just run it off a Bluetooth heart rate strap.
Okay.
Yeah. The one caveat I will say is that the hard part about HRV is everyone and their brother is sticking HRV into everything now. And if you don't know how the measurement is done, when the measurement is done, and what are the limits of the measurement, it gets to be kind of hard. So, for example, Aura's published data showing that their HRV algorithm is actually really good. Like, they sample at the right amount. I've looked through the whole technical paper. I've talked to the former CEO, all that kind of stuff. The downside is it's collecting it over the course of the night. So it's collecting it during sleep. So if your sleep time is a little bit different or conditions of sleep vary, it can affect your HRV a little bit. And then if not so much in this population, but if you're listening to this and you're a very trained person, especially on the aerobic side, if you have a very low resting heart rate, odds are you're going to have a higher HRV. You're going to be more on that parasympathetic side. And at night, you can have something called parasympathetic saturation, which just means that your heart rate variability is so high, it doesn't move around a lot from the sympathetic stressors during the day because you're laying down, right? So the cardiac system doesn't even work much against gravity. So the emails I get from these people all the time are, yeah, you said Aura was good. This thing's a piece of poo. It doesn't do anything. And I went out and I had 3 beers last night. My HRV didn't change at all. And I'm like, all right, what is your resting heart rate? Oh, it's 37. I'm like, okay, yeah. you probably don't need to use Aura for that. So I do still like commanded measurement first thing in the morning. Most people in a seated position. It is going to be much more sensitive to stressors that occurred the previous day. Aura, Garmin, Apple still won't disclose what the hell they're doing with HRV. It seems like it changes every day, but Garmin and Aura have been pretty stable. Like, they'll get you in the ballpark for sure, and I think they are useful. But I still like a once in the morning commanded measurement if you're really trying to kind of more tightly dial things in.
Sure. And then, with Morpheus, for example, your apps gives you a heart rate variability number, anywhere between 0 to 100. And so can you talk a little bit about like what that number means and like what is a good, what's a range that is okay? Like when do you start to get worried?
Yeah, that's the other hard part is everyone has their
Their
own
own
way of doing
metric.
HRV. So not only do you
Mhm.
have the time of when it's collected, the method of when it's collected, was it overnight or was it a commanded measurement? Now, even most of them are doing what's called a time domain measurement, which you don't have to spend time talking about. Within the time domain measurement, there are a couple ways you could do it a little bit different. Granted, they are relatively similar. And then, like iFleet does this also. They're like, well, if I tell someone, hey, your heart rate variability last night is 23 milliseconds or whatever, I don't know what the hell does that mean. I don't know. It doesn't mean anything to me. And so Joel did the same thing when they did Bioforce. He got it to match the Omega Wave system more. So it's basically a 1 to 100 scale. So they take the HRV in the back and they have a transmutation equation that changes it to 1 to 100. So 100 is like highly, highly parasympathetic. A 1, you're probably dead. Like the lowest HRV score I've ever seen on an athlete was Simon sent me one, was 33. And this is at rest. And I'm like, holy crap. I said, what happened? He's like, he's currently in the hospital with bird flu in the ER in the UK. So I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, he's not doing well.
Okay.
So you have to know each system and know kind of what is a air quotes good range or not so good range. And
Mhm.
that's what also makes it harder. It's like for me on the athlete scale, like, if you're in the 70s, you're pretty good. 80s, you're probably really good. 60s, it might be passable. 50s, you definitely need work. 40s, like something's really bad going on. If you look at Aura, my bias is most people should probably be in at least the 40s. 50s would be a little bit better. Garmin's pretty similar. And that's the hard part is you have your number where you should be related to the population, but then you really want to look for from your baseline, are you going up or down? So I'm much more interested in the change from your individual baseline. That'll tell us kind of more of the day-to-day stuff. Where your number is will kind of give us an idea of, health parameters and things like that. Like I've seen some pretty scary low numbers on Aura where I'm like, okay, yeah, I saw one 2 weeks ago that was in the single digits. I'm like, you're scaring the crap out of me. Like there's something going on. And you talk to the client, like, oh, he sleeps 4 hours a night and he travels East Coast, West Coast. And I'm like, okay, yeah, he definitely needs to work on that.
Definitely in full on sympathetic mode.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's really helpful, I think, to know and for people to hear that, like, device to device, there are differences in what these kind of numbers and algorithms might mean. And I think with iFleet, don't they kind of code it as like red, yellow, green? Like when you're in the
Yep.
green, you're good. Don't worry about it. So there's also a bit of a color coding system that just makes it a little bit more easy to say, all right, I don't have to worry about this.
Yeah. And most of those are doing that, comparing your number now compared to an average. And the iFleet one is pretty accurate. Like green's always been pretty good. Amber, yeah, caution. Like, you might do your same training, you might change something, and then red on that system is definitely red. Like rarely have I seen red on that system be an error. Aura does some stuff a little bit different because it's looking at multiple different things that go into the total readiness score and that type of thing. I I don't use that score, to be perfectly honest. Clients like it. They're like, oh, look at this. But you have to know what goes into that score, and certain things are weighted more heavily than other things. So, for example, on Aura, if you fall asleep watching TV, it may say you weren't asleep, but it may give you like an hour and 10 minutes latency. And that may not be a true latency because you didn't technically go to bed at that point yet,
Mhm.
but they heavily weight latency in the algorithm. So just you can edit that and change it, you'll see your score, go up quite a bit. So I like looking at just the raw numbers. What's your respiratory rate, resting heart rate, HRV, body temp on there is super, super useful. And once you know how to interpret those and just kind of generally what they mean, just look at those and you're probably going to be better off.
Yeah, got it.